Welcome, and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Sam O'Daniel, the Vice President of Civilian Sales at TVAR Solutions, and Joye Purser, the Global Field Cybersecurity CISO for Veritas Technologies. Joye, Sam, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here.
Pleasure to be here.
And our topic is innovations in backup systems. Let's just start by unpacking a little bit of what some of the challenges are that agencies face when they are backing things up to the cloud.
So I'm happy to take that one and start it off here. When working with backup and disaster recovery solutions, traditionally it has been one of the more important aspects of data center architectures, protecting the data, ensuring that it's recoverable, as well as not tampered with. When it comes to the new age of digital transformation and workloads, what we've seen is a lot of agencies are struggling when it comes to looking at some of the newer technologies and backing them up and protecting them, such as containers and microservices capabilities like Kubernetes. And then adding on top of that, the large, vast quantities of data that are continuously being created by these federal agencies, and the network and bandwidth that they have to get to both on-premise environments and to the cloud is continuously being strained. So we're seeing a lot of agencies struggling with the ability to move large quantities of data through network pipes, as well as being able to protect those modern workloads.
Okay, and Joye, over to you.
Yep. I was just going to say I agree with Sam in that I think though step one is that agencies need to understand what data they actually want to back up and if there are data retention policies in place. So whenever we think about data retention, protection, backup, and restore, I think you have to consider the people, the processes, and the technologies that are in place in order to achieve those goals. And so that the people are trained so that they are able to identify and protect the data. And then the technologies, and I'd love to talk about Veritas technology, some of the innovations in backup and recovery that this company's developed over time. And then also just being able to identify aspects of the data. Is there PII or personally identifying information? Are there other restrictions on the protection of the data? Is it classified, unclassified? Is it competition sensitive? Is there industry data that's part of that? How long should it be kept? What type of backups need to be done and on what cadence? So those are all questions that software and IT professionals need to consider when backing up data.
Okay, well, let's talk about a little of the latest and greatest, the innovations and solutions that are available today for agencies. What should agencies know about what's out there and the benefits that these innovations can provide?
Yeah, so the world of backup is not super exciting, but it's become much more important with the era of post-pandemic cyber attacks. And really, as we've seen, the security of the data is super important. And so when it comes to backing up data, you can do a full backup, which is a complete copy of all of the data, or you can do an incremental backup in which you back up some of the data, but not all of it. And of course, the full backup process is compute and very time heavy. So it takes a lot more time to make an image of all of the data, especially if you're an agency like maybe the Department of Defense and you have tons of military data, or maybe your National Science Foundation and you have lots of research data, some of that which is generated external to the agency. So think about the complexity of all that data and how intensive it is to be able to back it up. So one technology or an innovation that's been around for a while is called deduplication. And it's a way in which the system looks for data that has changed or has not changed since the last full backup or incremental backup. And so deduplication enables the backup system to not have to back up things that haven't been changed, basically. And so it really decreases the time and allows for a much more rapid backup process. Now, separate from that is compartmentalization or compression of the data. And so that is separate from deduplication, but data compression is another way to be able to do this more quickly and have less storage needs. So one thing about Veritas is that it operates in cloud environments as well as on-prem. So a lot of agencies are really struggling with outdated on-premises systems that they really want to move to a cloud, but are really struggling in that transition. And so Veritas is one of the few companies that actually delivers hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environments, as well as on-premises backing up.
To add to that, Joy, all of the things that you mentioned, right, in regard to deduplication and compression, and then obviously the journey to the cloud, that all plays a part together. While you are being able to reduce the backup windows, increase the compression and deduplication of the data, which reduces your overall storage, all of that assists with the transition to the cloud as well, and being able to utilize the bandwidth that is available to those agencies from an on-premise environment to the cloud to ensure that those backup windows are met and the reduction of data is complete prior to being sent to the cloud. Therefore, increasing or reducing the time for backups, as well as reducing the overall network bandwidth costs that agencies see when it comes to moving to the cloud environments themselves.
Okay, well, every agency's cloud journey is going to look a little bit different, but there's going to be obviously some common elements here, migrating data applications to the cloud. What are some of those best practices that agencies should have in mind when it comes to doing this data migration safely and securely?
So I think that there's no way around the due diligence that's required by the owners and managers of the data to determine what is the data that is going to need to be preserved or backed up. How many copies are needed, and that can be in consultation with the backup company or with a cloud service provider, but usually it's going to be a backup company, and cloud service providers can do some of this, but really backup companies are really in the business of protecting the data, and the data owners are responsible in the shared services model. Data owners are responsible for the backup and the protection and the security of their data. So the cloud service provider keeps the data, but it's really, you can't, say that I'm not responsible for the security or the strategy in which we're going to back up this data. So I think, that preparation, even before you do the backup process, it has to be done, this due diligence of what needs to be backed up. And in order to determine what needs to be backed up, you have to understand what are the assets, what are the most important things, and what things maybe don't need to be backed up, because in order to set the cadence, right, are you going to do it every day? Are things changing so rapidly there needs to be some kind of partial or incremental backup each hour, once a week or once a month? And how much data is it? Because the quantity and size, the amount of data can really determine the needs for the backup system, right? So that has to be known, and that's an answer that the data owner and manager is going to be responsible for to set that strategy.
And on top of that, being able to ensure that the overall availability of the data and accessibility, both on a primary data center environment or a production site or disaster recovery site. I think we've just only touched on the ability to ensure that the backups are done correctly and efficiently, but we haven't necessarily touched on what it means to ensure that you have a full disaster recovery scenario built in, right? Data is always going to be available at the primary location. You can continue to back it up there for immediate and quick restores, but what happens if something happens to that site itself, a disaster of some sort, a power outage, things that could be out of our control? So ensuring that the data is available and not only available, but secure at an offsite or secondary location, which could be a secondary data center for that agency or the cloud, I think is a very important part to that strategy as well.
Yeah, can I just build on to that? Because when I was at CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, I would always go around and tell critical infrastructure owners that they need to be doing a tabletop exercise to understand what they would do in a crisis. And that should include restoring their data from backups. And I think that agencies should do the same thing. They need to test that backup system and process so that when things go down, especially if they're an agency that is responsible for critical infrastructure or payments for personnel or any kind of thing like that, then they should be testing those backups to make sure that operating systems and critical systems are able to be brought back online.
All right. Well, of course, we're talking about, security, and given a increase in cyber and ransomware attacks, what should agencies be thinking about when it comes to data resiliency?
Well, ransomware attacks are definitely top of mind for most of the federal government, as well as the rest of the commercial enterprises. Bad actors are continuously trying to find ways to compromise data sets, whether it be through phishing attacks or other ways to access government systems. And so a good ransomware strategy is very important, and ensuring that you have a platform that enables data immutability and the ability for data not only to be backed up, but to understand whether or not it's been tampered with, and also ensure that once it is backed up, that it cannot be tampered with. And back to what Joy mentioned in regards to creating that strategy around types of backups, how often you are backing up, that allows you as an agency to go back to a point in time that allows you to recover from a possible attack, so that you are able to pretty much block down that access point for that attacker in the case of a ransomware attack, to ensure that your systems could be accessible and the data is available.
And I think this is something that agency CIOs and CISOs at agencies understand. They have access to current and detailed threat intelligence, and they should have processes in place where they're, doing these tabletop exercises. They have their leadership engaged. They have a risk management process that's running at the agencies. I have some direct experience with this at a federal agency with 10,000 staff. So these are all things that security people at the agencies are handling, and that absolutely includes the backup. And I would just say things like the NIST framework can help really put a pinpoint on what types of things that CIOs and CISOs need to be covering. And then, of course, the FedRAMP certification for those moving to the cloud. For FedRAMP High, for national security agencies and other critical infrastructure or very sensitive data handlers, there's more than 400 controls in order for a vendor to obtain FedRAMP High status. It's not easy to do. So that conversation needs to be had if you're moving to the cloud. FedRAMP moderate or high, what do we need going forward?
All right. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Sam O'Daniel is the Vice President of Civilian Sales at TVAR Solutions, and Joy Purser is the Global Field Cybersecurity CISO for Veritas Technologies. Sam, Joy, thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy.
I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the Civilian Cloud Exchange.